Now, let's explore another case, that of Morgan Marie Wixon, later known as Morgan Mengel. Born on September 25, 1975, in Pennsylvania, USA, Morgan's early life remains largely undocumented, aside from being the daughter of Jan and Betty Ann Wixon. Her teenage years were marked by a rebellious streak, much to her parents' dismay. Despite their concerns, her parents held out hope that Morgan would one day settle down. Their hopes seemed realized when, in 1997, Morgan met Kevin Eugene Mengel, a young man a year her junior. Born on July 2, 1976, in Springfield, Bradford County, Pennsylvania, Kevin was the eldest of 3 children of Kevin Mengel Sr., a respected businessman. Kevin's upbringing with his brother Christopher, known as Chris, and sister Michelle was within a close-knit, prosperous family. However, by the time Kevin graduated from high school in 1995, his parents had divorced. They maintained an amicable relationship for the sake of their children. Kevin's mother, Kathleen, eventually remarried Dr. Richard Barton and established a new life in Westchester, Chester County, Pennsylvania, while Kevin Sr. settled down with his second wife in Downingtown. Although the split affected him deeply, family remained Kevin's priority. The separation from his parents had a profound impact on Kevin, and over time, his relationship with his father became particularly strained, leading to several years of estrangement. Despite this, those who knew Kevin described him as an ambitious and hard-working young man. When he first laid eyes on Morgan, he believed he had finally found the perfect partner to help him realize his dream of starting a family. Initially, Kevin's friends viewed Morgan as a charming and affectionate girl. From the moment they met, the couple was inseparable, and everyone assumed they were meant for each other. However, Morgan soon began to show signs of being less than sincere, revealing a troubling tendency to deceive. One of the first warning signs emerged a year into their relationship when she attended a family dinner at the Mengel household. Upon arrival, her noticeably larger belly caught everyone's attention. When someone courageously inquired whether she was pregnant, she flatly denied it, claiming she was merely a little swollen. What astonished the family most was that just a day later, Morgan gave birth to a baby girl named Mercedes. When they visited her at the hospital, she continued to deny any knowledge of the pregnancy, even asserting that she was surprised the doctor had informed her of it. Moreover, her demeanor was far from that of an excited first-time mother, yet the Mengels brushed aside her odd behavior, as Kevin was elated about becoming a father. Shortly after the birth of their daughter, the couple decided to marry. Following their wedding, Kevin established his own landscaping and gardening business, which flourished. Soon, their family expanded with the arrival of 2 more sons, Kevin and Billy. Kevin's devotion to his family was evident. He named his business using the initials of his 3 sons, MKB, located on West Chester Pike in West Goshen, Pennsylvania. To many, the Mengels appeared to be a perfect family, but beneath the facade of happiness, significant cracks were deepening. According to various sources, Morgan was having affairs with Kevin's friends, and he was aware of her infidelity. Despite being devastated by his wife's betrayals, Kevin consistently defended and forgave her. His reluctance to seek a divorce stemmed from his desire to provide his children with the stable home he had lacked, having experienced firsthand the fallout from his own parents' breakup. His friends claimed that the couple's relationship had become increasingly turbulent, with several arguments marked by Morgan telling Kevin that she hated him and could no longer tolerate him. Yet, astonishingly, the next day they would reconcile as if nothing had transpired. According to family accounts, Morgan had left home on at least 3 occasions to stay with her mother, but despite his discontent with his wife's infidelities, Kevin never distanced himself from his children. By the end of that same year, Kevin managed to rebuild his relationship with his father, and they grew even closer than before, despite the ongoing difficulties in his marriage. He remained committed to creating a united family, ensuring that his children grew up surrounded by love and support. As the spring of 2010 approached, things were progressing relatively smoothly. During this time, Stephen Chappell, a 21-year-old young man affectionately known as Steve, began working in Kevin's landscaping business. Kevin never imagined that the arrival of this new employee would irrevocably alter his fate. The Mengels had planned a family picnic, a special occasion as Kevin would spend this day with his father for the first time in 7 years. Everyone was excited and had high hopes for the reunion. However, as the day unfolded and Kevin failed to show up, anxiety began to ripple through the family. It was then that Kathleen received a message from Morgan, informing them that, due to unforeseen circumstances, they would be unable to attend the gathering. The family was taken aback, knowing how eagerly Kevin had anticipated this meeting. They couldn't shake the feeling that something troubling had occurred concerning Morgan, as they were all too familiar with the complex dynamics of the couple and her erratic behavior. They were aware of Morgan's infidelities and her tendency to lie to Kevin about financial matters, such as household bills. Concerns grew when they learned that she had previously been arrested for shoplifting and writing bad checks. They began texting and calling Kevin on his cell phone, but he did not answer. As they questioned each other about the last time they had seen or spoken to him, the Mengel family realized that several days had passed without contact. It was clear that something was amiss. Kevin was very close to his family, particularly his mother, and not a day went by without communication. Concern quickly turned into anguish, prompting Kathleen to call the police to report her son's disappearance that Monday. The police visited the couple's apartment and found Morgan, who calmly informed the officers that she was not worried about her husband. She claimed that Kevin had written to her, saying he was fine, and had asked her to manage the business while he took a break. Morgan explained that the landscaping company was going through a crisis and that Kevin couldn't handle the pressure. To support her statement, she showed the officers messages allegedly sent from Kevin's phone. After reading the texts, the officers concluded that he was simply an overwhelmed family man and businessman who wanted a respite, so no investigation was initiated at that time. However, the Mengel family was convinced that something sinister had occurred, and they insisted on trying to contact him. Kevin mentioned that in response to their constant attempts to reach out, they received text messages from his son's phone stating that he was fine and wished to be left alone, while assuring them that Morgan would take care of the business. The fact that Kevin was not answering their calls but was responding to messages further unsettled his loved ones, who struggled to comprehend the situation and wondered what was preventing Kevin from speaking to them. They noted that his messages were becoming increasingly brief, and the abbreviated writing was markedly different from Kevin's usual communication style. Additionally, the spelling and grammar were inadequate, raising further alarms. The Mengels alerted the police to their suspicions. It was then that the investigation into Kevin's disappearance began. Detectives discovered that on June 15th, he had an argument with his wife, after which he allegedly packed his belongings and left the house. Just over a week after Kevin's disappearance, they were shocked to learn that his wife, Morgan, 34, was apparently dating another man, Steve, a young man 13 years her junior, who had only been working at the couple's landscaping company for a few weeks. Morgan claimed that her husband loved Steve like a brother and had asked him to stay with her and help care for the children, introducing him to them as Uncle Steve. However, no one believed her story, especially since she and Steve were seen holding hands and enjoying themselves at the pool of their apartment complex. Additionally, Steve was driving Morgan's truck when they went out for a drive with the children. Kevin's family and friends were stunned by the revelations, prompting the police to subpoena Steve for questioning. During the interrogation, the young man admitted to having an affair with his boss's wife, but he insisted that she had made the first move, showering him with compliments until he fell for her. He confessed that their initial intimate encounters occurred in the van and in the company's workshop, but emphasized that Kevin was unaware of their relationship. When pressed further, Steve was told by investigators that if something had happened to Kevin, Morgan would likely blame him. At this point, he broke down, crying and stating that he did not want to answer any more questions. A few days later, Kathleen received a message from her daughter-in-law asking her to babysit the children for a couple of days. This sudden request raised her suspicions that Morgan might be planning to run away, prompting her to take action. Chris and some friends stood guard outside his brother's apartment early one morning and saw Steve leaving the building with a bag. Shortly thereafter, Morgan appeared with more bags that she loaded into the van before driving away, with the children absent. Immediately, Chris alerted the detectives in charge of the investigation and began to follow them. At that moment, one of the detectives who had arrived at the scene in hopes of finding Kevin or a clue to aid in the investigation happened to be nearby. Morgan exited the vehicle, which was filled with a mountain of clothes in the cargo compartment, and hurried past the detective. When the officer turned to speak with her, something unexpected occurred. Steve started the van and sped away. The investigator asked Morgan what was happening, to which she replied that perhaps Steve had done something to Kevin. Morgan was taken to the police station to provide an expanded statement and clarify the circumstances. During the interrogation, she claimed that Steve had expressed his love for her and insisted he would do anything to be with her. When asked if she believed Steve had harmed her husband, she quickly responded that Steve had struck Kevin in the back of the head with a shovel. The detectives left Morgan in the interrogation room while they rushed to contact the tech company to attempt tracking Steve via the geolocation system on his phone. Although they were unable to locate the suspect, they uncovered something more significant that would prove crucial to the case. Through the analysis of Steve's communications, they discovered hundreds of messages that potentially related to Kevin's disappearance. A dedicated team was assembled, spending hours sifting through each message. Investigators soon realized that Kevin was the target of a sinister plan orchestrated by his wife and her lover, aimed at eliminating him so they could retain the business and raise the children together. In one of the messages, Morgan explicitly stated that if Kevin were to leave, she would take over the business, allowing them to live happily as a family. The detectives also found references to poisoned tea and the shovel, but the timeline of events leading up to the crime began with an internet search where the couple had found instructions for preparing liquid nicotine, which indicated that just a few drops of the substance could be lethal. Through the investigation, it was established that before 8 p.m. on June 16, 2010, Steve was in his mother's kitchen preparing concentrated liquid nicotine. Once it was ready, he added it to a bottle of Kevin's favorite tea and handed it to Morgan. The following morning, she placed the tainted drink in Kevin's truck for him to consume during the day. As they had anticipated, while working, Kevin took a sip of the iced tea to quench his thirst, completely unaware that his young employee was closely monitoring his every move. Ignoring the contents of the bottle, Kevin took another sip. However, after 2 hours, it seemed the substance had not affected him. Not only was he still working as if nothing had happened, but even Lucia, a colleague, noted that he appeared neither dazed nor lethargic. Realizing their initial plan had failed, they resorted to a backup strategy. Steve texted Morgan, informing her that he had a shovel in hand and was just waiting for Kevin to bend down. That moment came shortly after 10:20 a.m., while Kevin was operating the hedge trimmers. Without him noticing, Steve approached from behind and struck him over the head with the tool. The attack was so violent that the shovel broke in half. Undeterred, Steve grabbed another shovel and struck Kevin twice more, causing that tool to break as well. He then retrieved another shovel to continue the assault. Once he realized Kevin had stopped breathing, Steve messaged Morgan to inform her that it was done. Concerned about whether Kevin had truly died, Morgan insisted on seeing for herself. She arrived at the company's workshop, where, according to Steve's later account, she stepped over the lifeless body of the man who had been her husband for 13 years. Their conversation revealed the gravity of their actions. "Is it done?" "Yes, pretty much. I was just waiting for him to bend over. I've got a shovel in my hand." "All right, great. I got Billy. You can drop him off at home before you come over. There's nobody there." "I'll drop this off, and I'll get a check. Okay." "It's done." "Come here already, seriously. Answer me, very seriously, come here now." "It's been 3 minutes, you closed the door. I don't like being away from you." "I was thinking the same thing. I don't want you to get tired of being around all the time, but right now I'd rather you be close to me." "It's not going to happen. I can't stand being away from you, especially now." When she arrived, Morgan kissed Steve and took control of the situation, giving him instructions on how to dispose of the body and the evidence. Together, they wrapped Kevin's body in a tarp, tied it with string, and concealed it in an unused company garage. After cleaning up, they left. According to court records, the couple seemed to revel in the moment, with Morgan even joking that she could become a spokeswoman for the brand of tea they had used in their attempt to poison Kevin. 4 days later, Steve took Kevin's body to a wooded area behind the high school he once attended and buried it in a shallow grave he had prepared earlier. Meanwhile, Morgan retrieved her late husband's phone and began sending messages to Kevin's family and friends, as well as to her own phone, attempting to create the illusion that everything was normal, despite the fact that technology could easily track both signals to the same location. Still at the police precinct, Morgan was confronted with the incriminating messages and was immediately placed under arrest. Thanks to the satellite tracking of the phones involved, authorities discovered the location where Kevin was buried just 2 days later. Meanwhile, Steve had fled to Colorado, driving Morgan's truck. When apprehended, he refused to cooperate with the extradition process, but ultimately chose to return to Pennsylvania with the police. On Sunday, July 18th, a memorial service was held to honor Kevin's life. His family requested that, in lieu of flowers, donations be made to a trust fund established for his children. Family, friends, neighbors, and clients gathered not only to bid farewell but also to contribute generously to the fund designated for Kevin's children, Mercedes, Billy, and their younger sibling, aged 12, 10, and 6 respectively. The children were left in the care of Kathleen and her husband, supported by the entire family, as they faced the challenging task of helping the children understand and cope with their father's death and the absence of their mother. While they grieved, they found solace in knowing that those responsible for separating Kevin from his beloved children were already behind bars and would soon face trial for their reprehensible actions. In January 2012, during the trial against Morgan, a disturbing fact emerged that jeopardized Steve's testimony and revealed the depths of manipulation to which Morgan was capable, even from prison. She sent letters to Steve claiming she was pregnant with twins and that he was the father, attempting to coerce him into taking responsibility for the crime. In hopes of securing her release to raise her children. To support her deceit, he even fabricated false birth certificates, complete with names and weights, detailing the supposed delivery and describing the twins' eye color and resemblance to him. Detectives eventually unraveled the truth, informing Steve that Morgan's claims were yet another of her lies. The twins never existed. This revelation prompted Steve to cooperate fully with the authorities during Morgan's trial. He became the star witness for the prosecution, recounting the beginnings of their clandestine relationship and how she had persuaded him to partake in the plot to kill her husband by poisoning him with concentrated nicotine. The trial also revealed that when the poisoning plan failed, Steve resorted to bludgeoning Kevin to death before burying him in a wooded area behind his former high school. There was extensive communication among the conspirators before, during, and after the crime, and it was the incriminating text messages that ultimately uncovered the truth about what transpired at Kevin's landscaping business on the morning of June 17, 2010. Additionally, evidence showed that Morgan sent messages and emails to her husband's family and friends, even making posts on her social media to project an image of normalcy, claiming she simply needed time away from her husband. She attempted to fabricate a story about giving birth to twins, hoping Steve would take the blame and protect her from implicating her in the crime. However, on Friday, February 3, 2012, the judge presiding over the trial declared a mistrial due to the improper testimony of a police officer that had tainted the jury's perspective, preventing a fair verdict. This decision stemmed from a response made by a police sergeant regarding a conversation he had with Morgan's father, Jan Wixon, during the investigation in June 2010. The sergeant's comments suggested that Morgan could be a person of interest, casting her in a negative light based on her father's harsh assessment, which proved highly prejudicial and likely swayed the jury. The mistrial was a devastating setback for the Mengel family, whose wounds from the loss of their loved one were still fresh. They feared that the main perpetrator might escape justice. But they remained confident that accountability would ultimately prevail for Kevin and his daughter. 2 trials culminated in a single conviction. The second trial was scheduled for Tuesday, February 5, 2013. However, at the initial hearing, 37-year-old Morgan Marie Mengel pleaded guilty to first- and third-degree murder, criminal conspiracy, and 2 counts of possession of an instrument of crime for the murder of her husband, Kevin Mengel, aged 33. These charges carried a mandatory life sentence. During a proceeding that lasted just over an hour, the prosecutor outlined the circumstances leading to Morgan's arrest and conviction. Dressed in a black suit with a white shirt and her dark brown hair tied back in a ponytail, Morgan requested her attorney read a statement on her behalf. In it, she expressed remorse for the void she had created in Kevin's family, stating that through her guilty plea, she hoped to take responsibility for her actions so that everyone could begin to move forward. The judge sentenced her to mandatory life in prison for first-degree murder, with an additional 20 years of consecutive probation for conspiracy to commit murder. As sheriff's deputies escorted her to state prison to begin serving her sentence, Morgan walked past the Mengel family without even glancing in their direction. The The prosecutor remarked that the media's portrayal of the case as a love triangle gone awry was misguided, emphasizing that Morgan had only ever loved herself. A few days later, on February 11, 2013, 24-year-old Stephen Chappell pleaded guilty to third-degree murder and conspiracy to commit first-degree murder. He was sentenced to a prison term of 40 to 80 years at the state penitentiary. Unlike Morgan, Stephen chose to speak out, acknowledging that his words could do little to repair the pain he had inflicted. He expressed a hope that his remorse might, in some small way, alleviate the anger provoked by his actions. Clearly mortified, he stated that he would never forgive himself, nor did he believe others should forgive him either. The prosecutor noted that while he acknowledged Steve's guilt, he was equally aware of his own. That although he recognized Steve's guilt, it was equally true that certain circumstances provided a semblance of justification for his actions. Steve was a disaffected young man who had been selected and groomed by Morgan, who exploited his vulnerabilities. While Steve wielded the shovels used to kill Kevin, the real orchestrator behind the scenes was Morgan. She had confessed to the police that she harbored deep-seated hatred for her husband and sought to eliminate him to retain control of the business, evade a messy divorce, and sidestep a potential legal battle with him and his parents over custody of their children. Despite her heinous actions, Steve continued to search for companionship, clinging to the notion of love, and in 2023, he posted an advertisement presenting himself as a relatively balanced introvert, somewhat neurotic yet profoundly curious. The then 34-year-old man stated that during his 13 years of incarceration, he had come to understand the significance of relationships. He noted that dog training, art, music, and reading were his lifelines, and he sought someone who shared his adventurous spirit. As for Morgan, at the time of this video's release, little is known about her life in prison. The sordid crime that landed both of them behind bars had shocked and deeply scarred the residents of West Grove, Pennsylvania, a community once considered among the 10 safest cities in the United States. More than a decade after the events recounted, the memory of a family torn apart by betrayal, lies, and the manipulation of a selfish woman continues to haunt those affected. Now that you are aware of the details of this disturbing narrative, we invite you to share your thoughts. Could Kevin's loved ones have taken actions to prevent this tragedy? To what extent was Steve manipulated? We value your opinions, so please share them in the comments section. Remember to express your views with the utmost respect for the victims, other viewers, and those of us who will read them. Before you leave, don't forget to give us a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't already. Please share this video with anyone who might be interested in it. Until our next criminal investigation, goodbye.